That morning began like every other. Sunlight streamed through the white curtain, the kitchen smelled of roasted coffee. Mr. Walter, 72 years old, was still wearing the dark brown wool coat his wife used to jokingly call the Life Walk coat. He placed the kettle on the stove, scooped each spoon of coffee into the filter. His hands were steady. His eyes still sparkled. And his breathing perfectly calm. His grandson recalled, "Grandpa smiled at me. Even joked that today's coffee would taste better than the cafes." 15 minutes later, Mr. Walter collapsed onto the floor. Silent. Without warning. Not a single complaint. Not a sound. Just the steaming cup still on the table, and his hand frozen mid-air. As a brain doctor, I've seen many stroke cases. But that day, I stood frozen. Not because Mr. Walter was the most critical patient, but because he was the one I believed was the healthiest. He walked every morning. Blood pressure stable. No diabetes. No high cholesterol. Ate mindfully. No complaints of headaches, no dizziness. His last checkup all numbers were within healthy range. But that was only true until that morning. And I want to ask you sincerely, are you sure you or your loved one aren't just like him? Maybe you still drive to the store every week. Still walk with friends in the park. Still read the paper, play Sudoku, make tea every morning. But what if I told you those who seem just fine are actually the ones most likely to miss the brain's warnings? What if I told you the brain's silence is the most dangerous thing? Don't take your eyes off this video. In the next few minutes, I'll show you the early signs of stroke most people overlook, a 3-minute morning test that can reveal the risks your brain is silently carrying. And a way of living so you'll never have to be the one who looks strong then collapses in silence like Mr. Walter. We're not talking about fear. We're talking about taking action starting today. Are you ready? Let me tell you the story of another woman who once said, "I'm fine. I still take care of my grandchild every day." And then one day, she could no longer say her granddaughter's name. The fake healthy face when the outside doesn't tell the whole story. I met Mrs. Helen for the first time during a community health seminar in Seattle. She sat in the front row, wore white glasses, took neat notes, and occasionally straightened the shirt of the person next to her. She looked like the perfect picture of a woman over 60, cheerful, sharp, healthy without a hint of concern. After the seminar, she came up to me, introduced herself as the grandmother of 4, and joked, "I can still outrun the oldest one, doctor." Mrs. Helen had no chronic conditions. No diabetes. No high blood pressure. No high cholesterol. She hadn't even been hospitalized since giving birth to her youngest child. But one morning just a few weeks later she collapsed while scrubbing the kitchen sink. She slurred her words. One eye blurred. Her right hand dropped the rag without her even realizing it. When she arrived in the emergency room, she still tried to smile, saying, "I still cooked breakfast this morning. Still cleaned the house. I'm fine." I stood silently beside her hospital bed. Before me wasn't a typical stroke patient but the face of someone faking good health. All her initial test results looked fine. But the MRI scan showed a mild ischemic episode in her brain. And her right carotid artery, the one feeding the language center, was narrowed by 68%. What chilled me wasn't the level of damage. It was the fact that she hadn't felt a thing beforehand. No headaches. No insomnia. No numbness. No dizziness. You see, outer health can easily fool even the person living it. Why? Because the brain doesn't ring an alarm. It doesn't scream. It only whispers in tiny, faint signals that are easily brushed off as just aging. And here's the real danger: those who are active, positive, still working are the most likely to miss the signs. Because they believe they're healthy, they overlook the brain's quietest whispers. So how can you know what you might be missing? How can you tell the difference between a normal moment of imbalance and a slip from your cerebellum? How can you understand that I feel fine doesn't mean my brain is getting enough blood? But do you know what kept me up at night afterward? Not the 68% artery blockage. Not the image of that blood-starved brain region. It was the last thing Mrs. Helen said to me with trusting, gentle eyes. A sentence I've heard hundreds of times. From strong men. From dedicated mothers. From people sitting right in front of me still smiling, still breathing, still believing they'd go home that evening. A sentence that seems harmless, but is a beautiful mask hiding a brewing storm in the brain. And it's always the same, so haunting that I've memorized it. I felt completely fine yesterday. Just one sentence. Just 7 words. But behind it may lie damage no one can undo. So, in the next part, I'll show you what truly hides behind that sentence. Not feelings. Not numbers. But the brain's most dangerous mechanism: silence. Silence that kills. The most haunting sentence: I felt completely fine yesterday. Felt completely fine yesterday. That's not just a sentence. To me it's the brain's final, delayed signal before sinking into silence. Did you know? Out of every 10 people I meet in the emergency room for a minor stroke, 9 of them say that exact sentence. Word for word. As if someone whispered it into their ears, urging them to repeat it. Not realizing it wasn't true. Mr. George, 69 years old, played golf with his friends the morning before, laughed and joked the whole time. That evening, he felt a slight numbness in his left hand. He ignored it. The next morning, he couldn't move the left side of his body. And he said to me, I just played golf yesterday. Felt fine. Mrs. Susan, 66 years old, made apple pie for her granddaughter the day before. She stood in the kitchen for an hour, cleaned up, smiled. The next morning, she got disoriented walking into the yard, couldn't remember where she was going. When she woke up in the hospital, she whispered, I don't get it. I was fine, I even read a book last night. Do you see the pattern? They all felt fine. Until they couldn't even say the word fine clearly anymore. Why? Because the brain doesn't scream in pain. It doesn't ring alarms. It's not like the heart, liver, or stomach. It breaks. In silence. Like a light bulb still glowing but the wires inside are frayed. And at some point it goes out. Without warning. Here's what worries me the most: the silence of the brain is a killer, slow, but sure. Not because it's cruel. But because it believes you'll notice something's wrong. Sadly, we've gotten used to ignoring small things. And sometimes, those small things are the final warnings. So, how can you tell when it's normal tiredness and when it's mild brain ischemia? How can you know the brain is sending signals even if you don't feel anything unusual? You think stroke arrives with screams, piercing pain? No. It comes in chilling silence. A moment of dizziness as you stand. A morning when your face in the mirror looks slightly off. A sentence that suddenly stumbles in the middle. Just a flash. But to me it's the background music of a brewing brain storm. The more patients I see, the more I realize, the brain doesn't shout, it whispers. And most people don't listen because they think it's just getting older. But the truth is, the brain always sends signals before it collapses. They're tiny. They're faint. But if you know how to look, they're as clear as a warning bell. I'll show you each of those signals, every quiet message the brain sends out each day. Not to scare you, but to give you the one chance to act before it's too late. Shall we begin? 5 silent warning signs your brain always sends. I've seen so many people ignore the very first signs. Not because they were careless, but because those signals were so mild, so easy to mistake for everyday things. But as a brain specialist, I know, each of those tiny signals is a quiet knock from deep inside the nervous system. Here are the 5 most common whispers I've seen before a mild stroke. If you or someone you love have experienced any of these, pause and listen carefully. 1. Tiredness after a good night's sleep. You slept 7-8 hours, didn't wake up during the night, but in the morning, your head feels heavy, eyes sluggish, body slower than usual. Many think maybe it's the weather or still sleepy, but in fact, this might be a sign of mild oxygen shortage in the brain during deep sleep. If one morning you wake up and don't feel as refreshed as usual, don't rush out of bed. Sit still for a bit, breathe deeply, and listen to yourself as if you're asking your body, is there anything I need to pay attention to today? 2. Lightheadedness when standing up. You're sitting, then stand up but suddenly feel a little dizzy, or need to steady yourself on the chair for a few seconds. It's not always blood pressure. Sometimes, it's a sign that blood flow to the brain isn't stabilizing well due to hidden blockages. In that moment, don't rush. Stand up as if you're beginning a new day with gratitude, each movement slow, intentional, and mindful enough to notice even the tiniest change. 3. Forgetting a simple word right when you want to say it or in a conversation, then suddenly freeze for 1 to 2 seconds. The word like knife, TV, jacket, just disappears temporarily. A few seconds later, it comes back so you laugh it off. But truth is, this may be a disruption in language signal transmission due to uneven blood flow in the brain. And if this happens, there's no need to panic. Just take note of it in your mind, like a small underline. Let it sit, watch for more. Like when you hear a strange sound in your home, you're not scared, you just listen more carefully. 4. Slight numbness on one side of face or hand. You feel your left cheek is a little odd, not fully numb, not painful, just off. Or your right fingers touch something and feel a bit unusual. This symptom is easy to overlook, but in neurology, it could be a sign of a transient ischemic event in the sensory region. If you've ever felt something like this, don't brush it off as nothing. Pay closer attention. Maybe next time, you rest your hand on your cheek as a habit, and discover something's quietly changing. 5. Emotional instability. Easily irritated, hard to focus. You get angry over small things. Can't concentrate on the task at hand. Or you feel like you're not quite yourself. This may be a sign of reduced blood flow to the frontal lobe, the center for emotion and thinking. And if your mood feels off, don't just try to push through. Sit down and gently ask yourself, am I overloaded today? Is there something in my brain that needs a little more care? Each of these signs may be small, but they're not meaningless. They don't scream, don't shake you awake, don't rush you to the hospital. But they're the first leaves falling, signaling a changing season ahead. If you notice them, you still have a chance. And if you remember them, you've already begun protecting yourself with the smallest steps. Now stay with me. I'll guide you through a gentle self-check, just a few minutes each morning, so you can truly listen to your brain before it's too late. Have you ever just sat still in the morning, simply to listen to yourself? Not to plan. Not to drink coffee. But to ask, is my brain okay today? Sounds strange. But I believe, before talking to the world, talk to your own brain. And you can absolutely do that in less than 3 minutes every morning. No devices. No one else needed. Just a bit of stillness and a bit of curiosity with yourself. Right after washing your face, pick any 3 words. For example, watch Bicycle Kitten. Say them out loud, clearly. No need to try hard to remember, just speak and let them go. Then, don't try to recall right away. Go on to the next step. Then after 2 minutes, try to recall those 3 words. If you forget one word, or speak slower than usual, don't worry. Don't blame yourself. Just take note. Because your brain just revealed something worth observing. Pick a flat surface. Stand on one leg, eyes open, arms relaxed. Slowly count from 1 to 10. You might feel a slight wobble, that's normal. But if you have to quickly put your foot down, or reach out to balance, it could be a sign of cerebellar coordination loss, even if you still believe you're just as steady as ever. And if you could do it yesterday but not today, pause for a moment and ask, what's changing that I can't yet see? Take a small piece of paper. Write your name but start from the last letter. If your name is Jack, write J-A-C-K. Don't rush. Don't look at a sample. Watch closely. Do your hands tremble a little? Do you get confused reversing the order? Do you feel distracted, slower than usual? This exercise activates the motor coordination area and the frontal lobe for language memory behavior planning. Just a few letters, but sometimes they're the doorway to detecting very early damage. 3 steps. 3 minutes. And you've just had a quiet, profound conversation with your own brain. You don't need to understand all the anatomy. You just need to listen to yourself long enough to know when something feels different than yesterday. I've always believed, the body knows how to whisper, if we learn how to listen. And the brain, though the most complex, always speaks up, even if only through the tiniest signs. You could start tomorrow. Or, start as early as tomorrow morning when you sit by the window, the light just rising, and you gently ask, "Hey brain, are you okay today?" And if the answer is not quite, then don't worry. Because there are many tiny things you can do that day to help your brain relax, keep blood flowing evenly, and protect the tiniest vessels in your brain like delicate, precious threads. Not big things. Just the way you drink a warm glass of water. The way you step into the sunlight. Or one small daily habit I'm about to share that has helped hundreds of my patients stay sharp, even as their years keep going further. So, let's keep going. I'll tell you about the small actions that bring quiet strength to your brain, like peaceful breaths on a gentle morning. Actions as light as air, yet they nourish your brain's blood vessels every single day. There are things so small you don't even force yourself to remember them. They're not in medical handbooks, and you don't need alarms to remind you. Yet these are the invisible fences that protect your brain every single day. I call them actions as light as air because you don't see them, but you'll feel healthier if you practice them regularly. Let's start with light. Each morning, right after you open your eyes, instead of lying still for 5 more minutes, sit up slowly, open the window, and let real sunlight touch your skin even just for 2 minutes. Morning light can reset the brain's biological clock, helping reduce slow blood flow in the brain's small vessels during early hours, which is the time of highest stroke risk in the day. I once told Ms. Margaret, 82 years old in New Mexico, to do this every morning. She told me, "Just having the morning sun touch my hand makes me feel alive again." If you still have morning light with you today, treat it as a gift. Then comes water. But at the right time. Most older adults drink water when they're thirsty. But thirst means it's already too late. The best way. Right after your first bathroom trip of the day, drink 1 glass of warm water, about 150 to 200 milliliters. Don't drink cold. Don't drink fast. Let each sip flow down gently like a morning greeting to your brain's vessels. I've compared this to turning on a hose before watering your garden. If you let the garden dry out before you think of water, it's too late for the tiniest plants. And in your body, the tiniest plants are your delicate brain vessels, the most vulnerable places. So don't wait for thirst. Offer your brain a morning invitation with a glass of warm water, as if you're pouring life into its deepest parts. And don't forget the breath. Gentle but alert. I know an old man named Henry, living in Kansas. He's 90 years old this year. He still walks by himself every day, no cane. Every morning, he takes 1 minute just to breathe. No yoga. No technique. Just sits still, inhales slowly, exhales slightly longer, repeats 5 times. I asked him why he does it. He said, because that's how I tell my heart and brain that there's no need to rush. A simple answer, but one that made me a brain doctor nod with respect. You don't need much. Just take 1 minute each morning to breathe deeply and slowly. That action reduces small vessel spasms, increases oxygen to the brain, and stabilizes morning blood pressure, one of the most dangerous factors in silent strokes. Lastly, movement. But not exercise. Older adults often think, I need to do 30 minutes of exercise every morning. But what I want you to remember today is simply, every 45 minutes, stand up and take 10 steps. Even if you are watching TV, reading the paper, playing with your grandkids, just stand up, take a few steps, take one deep breath. That triggers stronger blood flow through the carotid and basilar arteries, feeding your brain like gently shaking a pond so algae doesn't build up. No strain needed. No workout clothes. Just don't stay still too long. Because the most dangerous silence to the brain is prolonged immobility. I'm sharing all of this not to worry you, but to help you see, you're holding far more tools than you think to keep yourself healthy. You don't need big changes. You just need to become a more mindful observer of your own breath, light, steps, and cup of water. Because sometimes, what keeps you clear-headed isn't medication, but the morning sunlight, a warm sip of water, a quiet minute of breathing, or a few silent steps through a familiar home. They cost nothing, make no noise, carry no therapy label, yet quietly repair and nourish your brain's smallest vessels every day. But here's the sad part, many people don't do these simple things, not because they don't know, but because they think they're still fine. They trust that feeling of I'm still healthy. Until one morning, they can't hold their coffee mug, can't remember their grandchild's name, or can't form a complete sentence. I've met so many people like that. And there's one man I'll never forget, because it was that very sentence, I'm still fine, that nearly cost him his voice forever. That story is what I need you to hear next. Because maybe, just maybe, it'll help you look at yourself or a loved one in a whole new light. I'm Still Fine and the Silent Stroke, the story of a 67-year-old man. I remember his face clearly from that first appointment. A tall, strong man, 67 years old, living in Colorado. His name was Samuel. He walked into my office, gave me a firm handshake, and smiled with confidence. Doc, my wife made me come, but I'm still fine, nothing strange going on. He said he still walked every morning, still played pool with friends every afternoon. No headaches. No dizziness. No slurred speech. No weakness in arms or legs. That man looked healthier than many others his age I had seen. But his wife felt differently. She told me small things, what I call the brain's forgotten whispers. Lately, he kept mixing up the names of their son and grandson. He would walk into the kitchen, then just stand there, forgetting what he came for. One day, he held a coffee cup, but his left hand trembled slightly, so he used both hands. Very small things, but she found them odd. He brushed them off, probably just aging a bit, everyone does that. I listened carefully. And I said, Mr. Samuel, I believe your brain is speaking, you just haven't heard it yet. We ran a few simple tests. Did an MRI scan of the brain. And the results left him silent. The images showed multiple small areas of brain damage caused by repeated minor ischemia, but he had no idea because each incident was too small to cause obvious symptoms. I call them silent strokes. They don't knock you down, but they slowly weaken your brain bit by bit. And if nothing changes, a real stroke could be coming within months or even sooner. Mr. Samuel stayed quiet for a long time. Then he said something I'll never forget. If my wife hadn't dragged me to this checkup today, I'd still be believing I was healthy. I share this story not to scare you, but to help you understand, the silence of the brain isn't always peace. Sometimes, it's a call for help. You just need to pay a little more attention. Trust your own intuition or your loved ones. And most importantly, don't say I'm still fine if inside something doesn't feel like yesterday. Because many of my patients after experiencing a stroke all say the same thing, I wish I had noticed earlier. Since that day, Mr. Samuel no longer says I'm still fine. Instead, he starts each day with one simple question: what does my brain need today? And I hope you can start like that too. Not out of fear, but because you're beginning to understand that brain health isn't about whether you fall, it's about whether you listen before that ever happens. You don't need to be a doctor. Just be someone who listens with a bit of awareness, a bit of courage, and a bit of kindness for yourself. Because if you're here, reading these last lines, then maybe you're ready to step into a new chapter, a chapter of awareness, of gentle action, and of protecting yourself every day. Let's end today's journey not with worry, but with the belief that, if you know early, you'll live differently. When you begin to listen, your brain begins to respond. We often think that only a big event can make us change. But in fact, the most lasting change begins with a very quiet moment when you pause, look deeply within, and ask yourself, am I truly as healthy as I think I am? If you've made it here with me, then perhaps that question is no longer just a question, but a gentle awakening. We began with a shocking truth: many older adults who seem perfectly healthy are silently carrying the risk of a stroke without knowing it. We followed the silent signs: slight fatigue, broken sentences, unusual heartbeats, symptoms often mistaken for just aging but are actually early cries for help from the brain. We heard the stories of Mr. Marcus, Ms. Margaret, Mr. Henry, each with their own story, yet sharing one thing: there was a time they thought they were fine. And then, they learned to change from the smallest things: a warm glass of water, a deep breath, a gentle step, a morning ray of light. Acts that seem invisible but keep the blood vessels in the brain alive every day. We also revisited the phrase "I'm still fine" and saw that sometimes, that confidence hides the chance to be saved early. And now, as the story comes to a close, I hope you hold one thing deep in your heart: you are not broken, you just need a new perspective. Your brain has always been sending signals, you just haven't listened closely enough. But if you start listening today, you might preserve your memory, your speech, your clarity, and a part of your life. Begin with things as light as air. Don't wait. Don't miss it. Because if you know early, you'll live differently. If this video has touched something inside you, click like as a gentle nod. Share it with your loved ones, especially those who still think I'm fine. Leave a comment below if something startled or awakened you. And don't forget to follow the Thrive 60+ channel, where my team and I don't just share knowledge, but join you in revisiting real experiences, lessons learned through time and health, to discover what truly matters for older adults, from protecting memory, cherishing sleep, to preserving daily dignity. This isn't storytelling. These are life-saving experiences, shaped through our journey with hundreds of older adults over many years. And we share them not to lecture, but to gently remind one another, aging should not be the end but the time to live most fully.